The signal was green, a single, steady green, light-emitting diode, a gallium phosphide semiconductor device no larger than a grain of rice, set into the face of the small, black rectangular device. The casing was a high-impact, glass-reinforced polymer, its surface textured with a diamond crosshatch pattern for grip, cool and inert in her hand. It felt like a cheap piece of consumer electronics, a garage door opener or a primitive television remote. But its function was absolute. The product of over 11,000 man-hours of research and development in a shielded, subterranean laboratory in the Glilo complex, north of Tel Aviv. One press of the concave red button under her thumb. A button with a precisely calibrated 2-Newton activation force and a 1.5 millimeter travel distance to prevent accidental depression. And it would transmit a coded 5-part radio frequency burst. The transmission protocol was not a simple signal. It was a military-grade frequency-hopping spread spectrum FSS signal, cycling through 5 predetermined, non-sequential UHF frequencies between 433.05 and 434.79 MHz in a 1.5-second window. This digital handshake, traveling at 299,792,458 meters per second, would be received by a custom-built, hardened circuit board hidden inside the chassis of a beige 1971 Volkswagen Beetle, parked 110 meters down the street, its antenna cleverly disguised as a strip of chrome trim. The receiver, powered by its own independent lithium thionyl chloride battery, a power source chosen for its long shelf life and stable voltage output across a wide temperature range, negating any reliance on the car's failing 6-volt electrical system, would verify the 5-part cryptographic key. If the sequence was correct, a field effect transistor would close a relay. The 12-volt current from a secondary, dedicated motorcycle battery wired directly to the relay would then flow through a heavy-gauge copper wire to a bank of 6 synchronized M6 non-electric blasting caps. The resulting detonation wave, a supersonic shock front, would ignite the 100 kilograms of high-grade RDX plastic explosive, a stable but terrifyingly powerful compound known as Composition C4. The explosive had been packed meticulously by a specialist from Mossad's Mossad technology unit, into the car's door panels, under the seats, inside a false gas tank, and even molded around the rim of the spare tire. The resulting shock wave, a wall of superheated gas expanding at over 8,200 meters per second, would obliterate everything within a 15-meter radius. The physics of the blast had been calculated to create a focused overpressure wave exceeding 1,000 psi, sufficient to turn a reinforced vehicle into shrapnel and its occupants into a biological aerosol. Her name, for the purposes of this operation, was Erica Chambers. Her cover legend, a multi-layered fabrication constructed by the Lohama Psychologit LAP division, stated she was a painter, an amateur ornithologist, a British citizen with a deep affection for stray cats and a small, independent income from a family trust. She was none of these things. She was a Katsa, a field operations officer for the Mossad, specifically for the Caesarea Special Operations Division, the tip of the spear. And from her 6th-floor balcony on the Rue Madame Curie in West Beirut, she had a perfect, unobstructed line of sight. For 10 months, this balcony had been her world, her hide, her perch. From here, she had documented a life with painstaking, forensic detail. Not her own, but his, the target's. She had filled 14 notebooks with timings, vehicle descriptions, license plate numbers, personnel changes, and behavioral patterns. Now, after all that meticulous observation, that life was measured in seconds. A tan 1978 Chevrolet Impala station wagon turned onto the street from the main boulevard. Her pulse did not quicken. Her breathing remained steady at 16 breaths per minute. Her heart rate, monitored by her own internal clock, was a placid 72 beats per minute. The training at Mossad's Midrasha facility, a grueling regimen of psychological and physiological conditioning, accounted for that. It was designed to sever the link between high-stakes situations and the body's natural fight-or-flight response. Adrenaline was a liability, but the focus, the sheer cognitive energy directed at that single vehicle, was immense, a laser of concentration burning through the ambient noise of the city. It was the lead car in a two-car convoy, standard procedure for the target. It was the Pathfinder, designed to absorb an ambush or identify a threat. He was never in the lead car. The second vehicle, an identical Chevrolet, appeared moments later, maintaining a precise 50-meter interval. It moved at exactly 30 kilometers per hour. He was a man of routine, of obsessive punctuality. It was his greatest strength in managing his complex organization and, today, his fatal vulnerability. Her eyes, aided by a pair of compact Zeiss 8X30 binoculars with T anti-reflective lens coating, scanned the second vehicle. The glass was not armored, an expensive affectation he considered unnecessary in his home territory. Driver, passenger seat. Two bodyguards in the back, their silhouettes identifiable by the distinct shape of the AKS-74U carbines held upright between their knees. The man in the passenger seat was laughing, his head tilted back. She could see the glint of his gold Rolex as he gesticulated, telling a story to the driver. It was him, Ali Hassan Salameh, the Red Prince, head of Force 17, Yasser Arafat's elite Praetorian Guard, commander of Black September, architect of the 1972 Munich massacre. For 7 years, he had been a ghost, a name on a list, a file thick with failures and near misses. Now, he was a man in a car, 40 seconds from a pre-selected, surveyed, and rehearsed kill box, the Volkswagen. The team's radio in her ear, a subminiature induction loop earpiece hidden by her hair, was silent. All communications ceased in the final 5 minutes, a strict protocol to prevent any stray transmission from being detected by hostile electronic countermeasures. The decision was hers, and hers alone. The car passed the dry cleaners on the corner. 30 seconds. It passed the lamppost with the faded poster of Kamal Jumblat. 20 seconds. Her thumb moved from the side of the device to the smooth surface of the red button. The plastic felt warm. She applied no pressure. Not yet. The timing had to be perfect, a calculation of speed, distance, and the 0.5-second electronic delay between transmission and detonation. Too early, and the blast cone, shaped by the strategic placement of the C4, might deflect off the front of his vehicle. Too late, and the trailing security car could be caught in the main blast, a complication, but not a failure. The primary objective was Salameh. The optimal moment, calculated by the engineers and confirmed by her own observations, was when the passenger door of his Chevrolet was directly parallel with the driver's door of the Volkswagen. A simple matter of physics. A complex matter of timing, nerve, and absolute certainty. The Chevrolet entered the kill box. 10 seconds. Her world compressed to the space between her eye, the binocular lens, and the target. She saw the color of his tie, burgundy. She saw the precise profile of his face, the famous charismatic smile. She saw him turn to say something to his driver. 5, 4, 3. Her brain, a highly trained organic computer, processed the final variables. 2. Her thumb depressed the button. It clicked, the sound unnaturally loud in the silent tension. The green light on the device blinked once, confirming transmission, then went dark. The mission was called Wrath of God. For the men and women in the Israeli government who planned it, it was a matter of national policy, a statement that the state would hunt its enemies to the ends of the earth. For the agents who executed it, it was a series of cold, hard problems to be solved. And at the center of it all were 4 key individuals, 4 nodes in a network of vengeance. The first was the target, Ali Hassan Salameh. Born to privilege in 1941, son of Sheikh Hassan Salameh, a revered Arab nationalist commander killed in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. He was not a back-alley revolutionary forged in poverty. He was educated at the American University of Beirut, fluent in Arabic, English, and German, and possessed a disarming, movie star charisma. He wore tailored suits from Savile Row, drove sports cars, and was seen with models and actresses on the French Riviera. The international press, captivated by his image, called him the Red Prince, a playboy with a cause. Intelligence agencies knew better. Behind the suave exterior was one of the most effective and ruthless intelligence operators of his generation. As the head of Yasser Arafat's personal security detail, 417, he was not just a bodyguard, but a spy master, running a network of informants and assassins that reached across Europe and the Middle East. As a senior commander in the Black September organization, he controlled a global network of operatives. His crowning achievement, the operation that sealed his fate, was the 1972 Munich Olympics massacre. He wasn't one of the gunmen who died in the botched rescue attempt. He was the architect, the planner, the man who selected the target, trained the Fedayeen team, and arranged their logistics with German neo-Nazi sympathizers. He understood the power of televised terror. Munich wasn't just an attack, it was a statement, broadcast live into the homes of 900 million people, a bloody advertisement for the Palestinian cause. After Munich, he became a phantom, protected by layers of security, false identities, and the chaotic politics of the Middle East. He was Mossad's #1 target, not just for revenge, but for capability. He was too creative, too well-connected, and too dangerous to be left on the board. The second figure was the hunter, Mike Harari, the legendary head of Caesarea, Mossad's Special Operations Division. Harari was Salameh's opposite in every conceivable way. Where Salameh was flamboyant, Harari was a gray man, deliberately invisible. He had no public profile, few existing photographs. His entire life was lived in the shadows. He had orchestrated agent extractions from hostile territory, recruited spies at the highest levels of enemy governments, and pioneered methods of targeted assassination that were now standard Mossad doctrine. He was a master of the game, but his record had one catastrophic public blemish. In July 1973, in the quiet Norwegian town of Lillehammer, a Mossad team, under his direct command, had gunned down a Moroccan waiter named Ahmed Bouchiki in front of his pregnant wife. They had mistaken him for Ali Hassan Salameh. The intelligence, based on a single, uncorroborated source, was faulty. The operation was a disaster. 6 Mossad agents were arrested by Norwegian police, the network was exposed, and Israel was internationally condemned. The Lillehammer affair was a profound personal and professional humiliation for Harari. It taught him a brutal lesson. Certainty was everything. Speed was a liability if it was not preceded by absolute verification. The hunt for the real Salame became his obsession, a way to erase the stain of his greatest failure and to avenge the agents, especially the brilliant Sylvia Raphael, who was imprisoned because of his mistake. He would not fail again. The third piece of the puzzle was the asset, the woman known as Erica Chambers. Her true name remains classified, locked in the deepest Mossad archives. She was not Israeli. She was a British citizen, born in 1948, recruited in the early 1970s after being identified by a Sion, a Jewish diaspora volunteer, in London. Her profile was perfect for deep cover operations. She was unremarkable in appearance, possessed a documented IQ of 1 in 45, and had an almost supernatural ability to project an aura of harmlessness. Mossad's psychological screeners noted her capacity for extreme compartmentalization, a rare trait allowing her to live a fabricated life, fully and completely, for indefinite periods, without the psychological stress that degraded most agents. Flashback. East Berlin, 1976. Her name was Ingrid. She was a quiet librarian from Copenhagen, visiting to study the GDR's state archival methods. Her target was an Oberstleutnant in the Stasi's Hauptabteilung II, the counterintelligence directorate. The mission was not an assassination. It was to plant a new generation of microtransmitter, a bug the size of a match head, inside his office telephone. For 2 weeks, Ingrid had followed a simple routine: coffee and a pastry at the same cafe across from Stasi headquarters every morning at 7:30. She read Kierkegaard. She never looked at the building. But the Oberstleutnant, a vain man, had noticed the quiet, bookish Scandinavian. On the 15th day, he approached her. Her heart rate remained at 70. She feigned surprise, then a shy, flattered smile. They spoke of books. The next day, he invited her for a walk. The day after, he invited her into the Lion's Den, a tour of his office after hours. Inside, as he boasted about his work, her hand, holding her purse, brushed against his desk. In a single fluid motion perfected over hundreds of hours of practice, a magnet disguised as a clasp on her purse plucked the telephone's receiver cap, and her thumb pressed the bug, held by a weak adhesive, into the recess. She replaced the cap. The entire action took less than 2 seconds. He turned back to her, smiling. "Impressive, no?" he asked. "Very," she replied, her voice calm, her face a mask of innocent admiration. She was not a killer in the traditional sense. She was a delivery mechanism, a precision instrument designed to be placed in close proximity to a target, to observe, to report, and, if necessary, to act as the final link in the kill chain. She had no connection to Israel, no Hebrew accent, no history that could be traced back to Tel Aviv. She was a ghost, a deniable asset of the highest value. The final key figure was the engineer, a name lost to internal archives. He was the head of Mossad's Metzada unit. In an organization filled with brilliant minds, he was a prodigy, a master of applied physics and microelectronics. His lab was a sterile sanctuary of oscilloscopes, soldering stations, and 3D milling machines. His job was to build the tools of espionage and assassination. Not off-the-shelf military hardware, but bespoke devices, tailored to the unique challenges of each mission. He built cameras hidden in cigarette lighters that could photograph documents in low light. He designed communication systems that could bounce encrypted signals off commercial satellites. And he perfected the art of the remotely detonated bomb. He understood that an assassination weapon had to be more than just powerful. It had to be reliable, concealable, and precise. For the Salome operation, he was tasked with creating a device that could be triggered from a distance with zero chance of failure or interception, and a bomb that would focus its blast in a specific direction, the Misnai-Chardin effect, ensuring the target was eliminated without causing excessive collateral damage that might compromise the escape of the agents on the ground. These four individuals, separated by ideology and geography, were on a collision course. A course set not by them, but by the geopolitical realities of the 1970s. The chessboard was a blood-soaked map of Europe and the Middle East. After the shock of the Munich massacre in September 1972, Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir convened a secret meeting with a small group of advisors, including Defense Minister Moshe Dayan and General Aharon Yariv. The meeting was not to discuss diplomacy or conventional military retaliation. It was to authorize the creation of Committee X, a clandestine body with a single, chilling mandate: to hunt down and eliminate every individual involved in the planning and execution of the Munich attack. This was the birth of Operation Wrath of God. The initial phase was swift and brutal. In October 1972, Wales Whiter, a PLO translator and Black September operative, was shot 12 times with a .22 Beretta in the lobby of his Rome apartment building. In December, Mahmoud Hamshari, the PLO representative in Paris, answered his phone. A Mossad agent, posing as a journalist, confirmed his identity. A second signal was then sent down the phone line as a specific audio frequency, which triggered a receiver connected to a bomb hidden in the base of the telephone. The list of targets grew shorter. Operatives were eliminated in Cyprus, in Athens, in Paris. Mossad's Caesarea unit, under Harari's command, moved like ghosts through European capitals, delivering what they saw as delayed justice. But Ali Hassan Salameh, the mastermind, remained elusive. Then came the Lillehammer disaster in July 1973. The fallout was immense. For Mike Harari, the public failure was a catalyst for change. The next attempt on Salameh could not be a rushed hit. It would require patience, deep infiltration, and absolute, incontrovertible intelligence. The focus shifted to Beirut. In the late 1970s, Beirut was the epicenter of the espionage world. A city fractured by civil war, it was a playground for spies. The risks for Harari's operation were magnified by the concurrent activities of rival agencies. The KGB, under their Operation Caucasus Hammer, was actively arming Marxist Lebanese militias, flooding the city with weapons and agents, creating chaos that could easily ensnare a Mossad team. Simultaneously, the CIA's Operation Cedar Branch was focused on monitoring Syrian influence, running its own networks of informants and surveillance teams. A Mossad agent could be mistaken for a KGB operative by the CIA or a CIA asset by the Syrians, with fatal consequences. Every move had to be made with the awareness that they were not the only predators in the jungle. Salameh felt safe in Beirut. He moved through the city with an entourage, a modern prince in his armed fiefdom. Infiltrating his world seemed impossible. For 5 years after Lillehammer, the trail went cold. That thread appeared in the spring of 1978. A new HUMINT asset, a source cultivated over years, gained access to the PLO's inner circle. The intelligence was gold. Salameh had a new wife, a routine, a pattern. In a sterile conference room deep within Mossad headquarters, Mike Harari laid out the raw intelligence. The target was no longer a ghost. The genesis of the final operation began. The file on Erica Chambers was pulled. The engineer was tasked with building the weapon. The hunt for the Red Prince was on again. The plan, codenamed Operation Chiron, was a model of compartmentalized, long-term operational design, unfolding in 4 distinct phases. Phase 1 was insertion and embedding. In March 1978, Erica Chambers flew into Beirut. Her cover story was meticulously constructed. She was a representative for a UK-based charitable organization, the Levant Orphanage Relief Fund, a real but defunct charity whose identity had been acquired by Mossad. For the first 3 months, her sole mission was to become part of the city's fabric. While she embedded, a separate logistics team began their work. They were mechanics, businessmen, tourists, all non-Israelis. They never met Chambers. They purchased a 1971 Volkswagen Beetle from a university student. They rented a small, secure lock-up garage in the industrial district of Burj Hammoud, and they began smuggling the components for the bomb into the country. The RDX arrived in a diplomatic pouch from a friendly European embassy, declared as archival materials, its density masked by lead foil lining. The custom-built radio receiver and trigger mechanism were hidden inside the casing of a commercial shortwave radio. The blasting caps were concealed in a shipment of automotive fuel injectors. Phase 2 was surveillance and site selection. Once Chambers was established, she began the hunt for the operational apartment, finding the perfect location, a 6th-floor flat on the Rue Madame Curie. From her new perch, the real work began. Every day, she sat on her balcony, ostensibly painting or reading, and documented Salome's routine. She fed stray cats, an activity that seemed innocuous, but allowed her to spend hours on the balcony without drawing attention. Her reports were sent back to Tel Aviv, not by radio, but through a dead drop system. Every week, she would leave a typed letter in a designated mailbox. The periods and commas in the letter were actually microdots, each containing her detailed surveillance logs. Harari and his team analyzed the data, building a precise, predictive model of Salome's behavior. The kill box was selected. Phase 3 was the preparation of the weapon. The engineer's trigger was a frequency-hopping device, virtually immune to accidental detonation or jamming. The 100 kilograms of RDX were shaped and placed within the Volkswagen by a master bomb maker from the Caesarea unit, a man known only as Yossi, flown in specifically for this task. The bulk of the charge was concentrated on the driver's side of the vehicle, packed behind steel plates to create a shaped charge effect. Yossi worked for 3 nights in the rented garage, carefully packing the explosives. The final product was a perfect Trojan horse, a harmless-looking car that was, in reality, a highly sophisticated directional anti-vehicle mine. The plan was elegant, but reality was messy. The operation, which had run smoothly for months, suddenly hit a series of major, potentially fatal complications. The first was a logistical near-disaster. In late October 1978, the team needed to conduct a dry run, placing the Volkswagen in the designated spot to check timings and sight lines. Yossi and another agent, posing as Lebanese mechanics, drove the inert but fully assembled car bomb toward the Rue Madame Curie. As they turned onto a side street, a whistle blew. A Lebanese gendarme flagged them down for a routine document check. Inside the car were 100 kilograms of C4. Yossi, his heart pounding but his face a mask of bored indifference, handed over the forged papers. The gendarme was young, officious. He circled the old Beetle. "This car is a wreck. The taillight is broken." Yossi sighed, affecting the weary frustration of a local mechanic. "Tell me about it. We're taking it to the shop now. The owner is a rich man, but cheap. He won't spend a franc if he doesn't have to." The gendarme grunted, unimpressed. He tapped the rear fender, inches from a panel packed with explosives. Open the trunk. For a split second, the mission, the lives of the team, a year of work, all hung in the balance. The trunk contained the spare tire, which itself was filled with RDX. Yossi popped the latch. The gendarme lifted the lid, glanced at the dusty interior, saw the tire, and slammed it shut. "Get it fixed," he said, handing back the papers. "And get a haircut." Yossi forced a smile, started the sputtering engine, and drove away, his hands shaking almost imperceptibly on the steering wheel. The dry run was aborted, but they had survived. The second setback struck a month later. Ali Hassan Salameh vanished. For 3 consecutive weeks, he did not appear. In the Beirut apartment, Chambers' nerve was tested. Her reports to Tel Aviv became terse. No contact. In the Tel Aviv command center, tensions spiked. Had the operation been compromised? Harari ordered the support teams in Beirut to stand down and prepare for emergency exfiltration. He spent hours staring at satellite photos and intelligence summaries, gaming out worst-case scenarios. Had Salameh been tipped off? Was it a trap? For 21 days, the operation hung in the balance. Then, as suddenly as he had disappeared, Salameh returned. The routine resumed. Post-operation intelligence would reveal he had been called to a secret PLO leadership conference in Damascus. The crisis had passed, leaving the team emotionally drained. The third complication was technical and almost catastrophic. In early January 1979, with the operation in its final stages, Yossi ran a final full systems diagnostic on the car bomb. He used a low-power test device to simulate the trigger signal. The receiver failed to respond. The small confirmation light on his test unit remained dark. He tried again. Nothing. A frantic coded message was sent to Tel Aviv. The receiver, the heart of the weapon, was dead. Panic set in. In the engineer's lab, a duplicate of the device was immediately put on a diagnostic bench. For 18 hours, he worked without sleep, tracing every circuit. The encrypted burst transmissions between Tel Aviv and the Beirut garage were terse and technical. Beirut, confirm power source voltage. Tel Aviv, confirmed, 12.8 volts steady. Beirut, check antenna continuity. Tel Aviv, continuity confirmed, 0 resistance. The problem was deep inside the circuit board. The engineer finally isolated it, a faulty tantalum capacitor in the power conditioning unit. A tiny electronic component, smaller than a pea, had failed, likely due to thermal stress from the Beirut humidity. It was supposed to store and smooth the initial electrical charge that armed the receiver. Without it, the device was a brick. They didn't have a replacement. Aborting the mission meant another year, maybe more, to re-infiltrate and set up. It was unthinkable. Harari made a command decision. They would attempt a remote repair. Yossi was a master bomb maker, not an electronics engineer. Over the encrypted link, the engineer in Tel Aviv became his eyes and hands. Yossi, locate capacitor C11 on the main board. It is a small, yellow, teardrop-shaped component next to the primary processor. In the dim light of the Beirut garage, Yossi peered at the complex board, a miniature city of resistors and transistors. I see it. Good. We are going to bypass it. You will need a single strand of copper wire, no thicker than a human hair, and your soldering iron. You are going to create a bridge from the positive lead of C11 directly to the R5 resistor. This will bypass the faulty component, but it's a brute force solution. The system will be highly sensitive to voltage fluctuations. The arming sequence might be unstable. Understood. For the next 2 hours, with the engineer guiding his every move, Yossi performed microsurgery on the delicate circuit board. His hands, accustomed to the brute force of shaping plastic explosives, had to be steady enough to solder a connection less than a millimeter wide. The smell of solder flux filled the small garage. "Easy," the engineer's voice crackled over the radio. "Too much heat and you'll fry the processor." Finally, it was done. A tiny, gleaming bridge of solder now spanned the 2 points. "Okay, Yossi," came the voice from Tel Aviv. "Test it. Low power." Yossi connected the diagnostic tool. He pressed the button. In his ear, he heard the engineer take a sharp breath. On the test unit, a small green light flickered, then held steady. It worked. The weapon was live again. Phase 4 was execution. On January 20, 1979, the day of the operation, the final pieces moved into place. At 10 a.m., 2 members of the logistics team drove the Volkswagen to its designated parking spot on the Rue Madame Curie. They opened the hood, feigning engine trouble, a plausible reason for the car to be left there for several hours. At 11 a.m., Chambers took her position on the balcony. Other team members, the watchers, took up positions along Salame's expected route, ready to signal any deviation. The exfiltration team confirmed their vehicles were ready. All the pieces were on the board. All that was left was for the target to make his move. At 3:35 p.m., he did. His convoy left his apartment, right on schedule. It turned onto the main boulevard, passing the first and then the second watcher, who gave silent, prearranged signals confirming he was in the car and on the correct route. The Pathfinder Impala turned onto the Rue Madame Curie. Then the second Impala appeared. 40 seconds to detonation. On the balcony, Chambers' thumb rested on the button. All the chaos, the close calls, the technical failures, the months of waiting. It all distilled down to this single, irrevocable action. Her mind was clear, a space of cold, professional clarity. She was no longer Erica, the painter, or Ingrid, the librarian. She was the final component in the engineer's machine, the human relay that would close the circuit. The Chevrolet's passenger door aligned perfectly with the Volkswagen. The geometry was perfect. Her thumb moved. The circuit closed. The signal flew. 110 meters away, inside the beige Volkswagen, the lithium thionyl chloride battery delivered a 3.6-volt charge to the receiver. The engineer's makeshift solder bridge held. The field effect transistor, now energized, closed the relay. 12 volts from the motorcycle battery surged through the copper wire, reaching the 6 blasting caps in perfect unison. The detonation was not a sound. It was a physical event. A sharp crack that tore the air, followed by a deafening roar as 100 kilograms of RDX converted from a solid to a superheated gas in less than 250 microseconds. The Misne-Chardin effect worked as designed. The steel plates inside the car's panels acted like a giant shotgun, focusing the main force of the blast sideways in a devastating, horizontal scythe of energy and metal. The Chevrolet Impala ceased to exist. It was not thrown or flipped. It was disintegrated. The chassis vaporized. The engine block was hurled over 100 meters down the street. The shrapnel, traveling at supersonic speeds, shredded the lead car and blew out every window for a block. From her balcony, Chambers saw a flash of white light, impossibly bright. She did not watch the result. Her part was done. She calmly placed the transmitter in her pocket, walked inside, closed the balcony doors, and picked up her pre-packed suitcase.